Hi, I'm James Dean Vogel of the BioProcess Institute, and this is Between Two Ferrules. Today's edition, we're going to be joined by Joseph St. Laurent. Joseph is head of industry relations and a regulatory expert for Chemic Laboratories, a Solvias company. So let's welcome Joseph. So we're really excited to have you here. We've been working together for quite some time, both our companies and then with BPSA. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Chemic and some of the things that are going on there? There's been some big changes recently.
There have been some big changes, all very positive. So as you know, Chemic Laboratories is a 20-plus-year-old company. I started it in 1998 with a couple of business partners. We focused in CMC chemistry and quickly moved into extractables and leachables. And then over the years, the company just continued to grow with a focus on customers. And in June of this year, we were approached by a company called Solvias AG. They're a Swiss-based organization who just have phenomenal scientists. They're about 10 times our size.
Wow.
So just north of 600 employees. And their focus was really to purchase a company so that they could make a move into North America. And I have to say we're about 90 days into the 100-day plan, and everything has gone absolutely perfectly so far.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
That's great to hear. I can tell you, our experience with Chemic has been top-notch, and you've been supporting us in many studies for our clients, and we appreciate that and look forward to working with you in the new format. But as we've seen, at least within the last 90 days, things have pretty much been the same.
They really have.
To detail and so
they
on.
really have. Solvias is a customer-focused organization. That was really one of the key decision makers for my partners and I. And again, but being 10 times larger, they have more bandwidth. Their extractables and leachables department is as best as I've seen. Really meshed well with our team as well.
Excellent.
You know, one of the things that's probably worth pointing out, though, is as we all look towards cell and gene therapy as the next real big hurdle to overcome. They have a team called Confarma in France, and that's really what they focus on is biologics.
Wow.
So it's going to be a really nice marriage.
Excellent. Excellent. Great. Your other kind of volunteer work, which turns into a full-time job,
Yes,
is
it
with
does.
BPSA, and you're second vice chair
That's
there.
right. Yep.
And all. So we've been working in BPSA for many years. Maybe you can share a little bit of what's going on in BPSA now and some of the things you see there.
Yeah, so BPSA, has really been quite transformative, I think, to the industry for a couple of reasons. One, it really focused on the technical attributes of the industry, really built their name. I think the number of member companies is well north of 60 or 70 now.
Yeah, it seems like every week we get a new notice of someone.
It seems like it, and I apologize, I should know the number, but I'm sure it's above 60. And just in this last year and a half, one of the things that the executive committee really focused on was kind of splitting the business of BPSA versus the technical attributes of BPSA, and went out to the member companies with the idea of really forming a scientific advisory board. That has since been completed. It's made up of about a half a dozen individuals.
Yes, I'm a member, so I appreciate that for being thought of for that.
And it's really going to allow the executive team to focus on the business of BPSA, really be the advocate for the industry, which is really what the organization is all about, but at the same time not really losing that scientific kind of prowess. And Kristen is really doing a phenomenal job as the chairperson there.
I think BPSA offers something that, through time at their summits and so on, really gave that total industry look at things. And so they always tried to balance that with the meetings when we'd have them. And they were, to me, refreshing from just, technical papers or maybe people just, for lack of a better word, maybe just selling their product and not really looking at it. But there were actual exchanges and more about the global industry and really how to get this to happen. And obviously now with the pandemic, we've seen, you know, really how that is so important.
You know, it's really interesting because I have to say I was actually a little bit of an opponent as to how the summits ran in the early days. You know, coming from a place of business development, I really thought we should have, you know, vendors with booths and so forth to really kind of help, frankly, help the coffers of the organization. And I was really glad at the time, but this was before I was part of the executive team, that the executive team kind of held their ground and said, no, we want to make this a technical meeting. We want to make it a place where folks can network and really kind of think about the overarching problems of the industry without any kind of pressure on sales.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not a place where we feel like we're going to get a pitch every time we talk to somebody. And I have to say that the executive team has done a phenomenal job in that. And frankly, you know, maybe foreshadowing, you know, I hate to say that this pandemic was a foreshadow, but when we think about where the industry was and the fact that the pandemic hit, I think it's because of organizations like BPSA and others that really allowed the industry to think about what it needed to do to be better, that allowed us to tackle this pandemic situation.
I can't disagree. I really think it's one of the key things. And I also, just to give credit where credit's due, Kevin Ott and others got people from BARDA before the pandemic to talk about what was going on in the government for planning for just such an event.
Yep.
So the industry had a window to that before there, and I would urge anyone, once things return to normal times, to think about going to the BPSA summits in the future.
I would as well. One last thing I'd like to say about that, Jim, is the one thing that I'm a huge proponent of, and that's of building teams. And this concept that we all have to be competitors within BPSA really kind of goes away, right? At the heart of it, many, if not most of us, are scientists, and scientists want to fix a problem. And it's a safe haven where scientists can go and really put their ideas on the table. You and I have had discussions over dinners many times as to what the problem with the industry is, and sometimes you solve it and sometimes you don't, but you bring that team together for the betterment of the industry itself. And I think it's done a phenomenal job.
I agree. I absolutely agree. So one of the biggest topics that we talk about at BPSA meetings is extractables. And we call it sometimes the E word, that it just seems to overtake many of our meetings and discussions.
It does.
And you, I'd have to say, are one of the foremost experts in this area. I did so much as wrote a paper with a few people back in 2012 about, you know, wouldn't it be nice if we could have a uniform testing platform for extractables so we could compare things. And we've gone a long way in roughly the last 10 years to kind of see this through.
Yeah.
And maybe you could share with us kind of what you think, you know, where we are or how we got here.
Yeah,
with the extractables.
so first of all, you know, you and I were talking earlier, I can't believe it's been a decade, right, where this problem kind of showed its ugly head, and here we are, you know, with methodologies in place. We've got a pending USP 665. We've got a BPOG protocol that's gone through a couple of revisions. And at the end of the day, the science is really driving kind of the, for lack of a better word, the standard operating procedure, or the study plans, or the procedures. And I think it took a while for the industry to wrap their head around the fact that, yes, there is a problem. You know, polypropylene is not polypropylene, is not polypropylene. And I think it forced the manufacturers and the suppliers, and it goes right back up the value chain, to be better at what they did, to offer a better product to the industry. And now it's gotten to the point where, you know, sponsors come to us, whether it's a supplier or an end user, and they essentially know what the problem statement is. You know, very rarely now do we have to convince them that there's a problem statement. Now they know there's a problem statement. They just need to know what product is maybe better or more appropriate for their use versus another product.
Or at least understand what the risks are. And then based on the process application, they're educated now to understand that.
Yeah, and you know, I think we've got a few more years ahead of us, but my goal, I think in the industry's goal at large, is we get to a point where this becomes almost a QC activity. I bring in a product, whether it's a gasket or a film or a tubing, and I know what protocol to follow, I know what standard operating procedure to follow, I know what my outcome should be, and I measure my outcome that I should get versus the outcome that I do get, and make a decision. And I think we're close, but we're probably maybe 2 or 3 years away from
Yeah.
that.
No, I agree. I think we have come a long way, and it is, though. I think the thing that some people maybe are not understanding is it is a significant effort. When we do a
Yeah.
study with you, I mean, how many extractions are typically in one product's
Yeah. Oh yeah.
repertoire
Well,
and so
the-
on?
I think that's probably, if we had to say where the hurdle is, as I pointed out, people know what the problem statement is. I think there's still a lack of understanding of the effort that goes into answering that problem statement. It's an intense process to go through the extraction program. You know, it's a week or more of straight extractions and work, depending on the analytes that we're looking for. You know, one of the things that I'd like to see happen is it become more of a routine procedure. And I, like I said, I think we're getting there. USP 665 is, you know, pending. It'll get there eventually. The BPOC protocol is pretty much in its final round, I think. So folks know how to execute. Now it's just how do we become smarter in that execution so that we can actually truncate the activity itself.
Absolutely.
And that'll become more cost effective.
What advice would you give a young person coming into this industry now? So whether they're actually working for companies such as Chemic, or perhaps one of the end users, or even a young person entering school now, what would you tell them?
You know, I tell you, I volunteer as the chairperson of my alma mater's foundation group. I don't know if you knew that or not. So I see students quite frequently, and one of the things that I tell them is be well-rounded. You know, if you're a strict, you know, chemistry student and you're going down that pathway, take a biology class. If you're a straight biologist, a cell biologist, or what have you, take a chemistry class. Really start to build that bridge early in your career, because one of the things that I've seen, and you and I were talking about this a little earlier, is that language matters.
Oh yeah.
Right? So when I'm having a conversation with a biologist, or a biologist is having a conversation with a chemist, if it takes half a day to get on the same page as far as what the language really means, you know, that's effort that could have been better spent.
Absolutely, because we were talking, you know, there are significant differences that we've noticed in occur between chemists and biologists, where they could be sitting in the same corridor or whatever, but how they look at problems, let alone the language or the terminology, and terminology is one of the biggest things, I think.
It is, but you make an interesting point, because one of the things that we've really tried to do as an organization over the years is really hire chemists and biologists and scientists from various walks of life. It's not uncommon to be in a conference room with a problem statement in the middle of the table and really come at it from 5 different angles, right? Because we're creatures of our habits, right? From our historical training and from our education. And when you throw, you know, multiple individuals with multiple backgrounds at a problem, you come up with a solution faster and a better solution, I think. And you know, if I had to give advice to students right now, that's really to get a breadth of information, breadth of knowledge.
Okay, good. I understand in the last year or so you got a new dog. Is that true?
I did actually, yes. So I have, she's now 7 months.
Okay.
She's a Labrador Retriever, and she's well on her way to being trained as an upland dog. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we're getting there.
What are you doing? How's that training go to?
A lot of time and a lot of patience. If you've had Labradors in the past, this is my 4th one. To get them through that puppy stage, it takes a lot of patience, and of course, as we get older, my granddad always said you're much more patient as you're older than when you're a young guy. And I think that patience is showing through on her, but I have to tell you, if she chews up another pair of my wife's shoes, I think I'm going to be in the dog.
Well, I hope not, and we hope to have you back here again soon. So again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much,
between
Jim.
Two Ferrules, and look you know, beyond your 90 days and well beyond with Chemic.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next chapter.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.